All right, so I just worked through the first three. Number one says write the first 5 terms of the geometric sequence. So geometric means you're going to multiply the number each time. So 6 times a half, negative a half, sorry. Gave me -3, and then -3 times negative a half, 3 halves. 3 halves times -1 half, -3/4, and then -3/4 and negative a half, 3/8. So the 5 terms in the sequence has to start with the one they gave you. So it's 6, -3, 3 halves, -3/4, and 3/8. So you will lose points if you don't include the one that they gave you, because that is the first one. Okay, so you want to make sure you pay attention. This all the answers for the most part are fill in the blank on your quiz. So you'll just type those in, no spaces, but separated by a comma. Number 2 is the first 5 terms, then find the common ratio, then write the nth term of the sequence defined as a function of n. So the first thing you do is, this is recursive, you multiply by a half each time, so 120 times a half, 60, 60 times a half, 30, 30 times a half, 15, 15 times a half, 15 over 2, and you'll keep it like that, an improper fraction. That's just, make sure it's simplified. Once you figure that out, you should see that the r is a half. So that's the second answer. And then the third is the actual formula, which would be A1, 120, times R, 1/2, to the n minus 1. I don't know why there's an extra parentheses there. That doesn't need to be there. Okay. Keep in mind that that kind of answer you'll write on an answer sheet. So if you're taking this here, obviously all your answers can be written on the test. But if you're or the quiz, if you're taking it at home, then you'll actually keep that one on the answer sheet. So it'll say it in the directions, write your A sub n on the answer sheet, and then answer the rest of it on the quiz. Number 3 says use the formula from number 2 to find the 10th term. So now we're using that formula. We're plugging 10 in. I'd get 1/2 to the 9th. You have to do the half to the 9th before you multiply by 120. If you cut that in half, you make 60 to the 9th. That's wrong, so be careful. So it becomes 1 over 512, and then you can reduce 120 and 512 down to 15 over 64. Good on those? Good from home?
Yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, then these, so I just didn't work them out yet. The sum of the finite and the sum of the infinite. Now, just pay attention to directions, obviously, because that will catch you, but also if you look at your summation, one has a number on the top and one doesn't. Okay, one has the infinity. So the formula for the sum of the finite is A1 times 1 minus r to the n over 1 minus r. The sum of the infinite is A1 over 1 minus r. So in number 4, I need A1, which is what? 12. The number not being raised to the power, right? Then I need 1 minus, what's r? Negative 1/2. Raised to the n, what's n this time? 4. Remember, if the bottom number is 1, then the top number is your n. So this would be to the 4th over 1 minus a negative 1/2. Then we simplify. So 12 times 1 minus negative 1/2 raised to the 4th is 1/16. Over 1 minus a negative 1/2 becomes 1 plus 1/2. This would be 16 over 16. This would be 2 over 2. I'd get 12 times 15 over 16 over 3 over 2. Change flip here to get rid of the denominator. And then 2 goes into 16 8 times, 3 goes into 15 5 times, and I get 12 times 5/8. Don't forget that 12, I would say that's a common mistake made in these kinds of questions. These are both divisible by 4. I'd get 15 over 2. And again, you'll type that answer in. It would be 15/2, like that. Good on that one? And then the last one, the sum of the infinite geometric sequence. So this only works if what's in the parentheses that's being raised to the power is, the absolute value of it is in between 0 and 1. So because that's 1/3, it does work. If it was 3, it's not possible. So I would write that. And you won't really know it because it's not like it'll give you an error if you plug it in. It just gives you an answer and it's a false answer. So be careful there. So A sub 1 is 6. 1 minus r is 1/3. This becomes 3/3 minus 1/3, so 6 over 2/3. Keep, change, flip. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and the answer here is 9. Yeah?
So, how the 1/3 is raised to the I minus 1, what happens, on the homework there was one where it was just like I.
If it's 0 down here, this one has to be I, and there's no difference.
So
It'll be one way or the other, it's no different. Yeah, like if you actually took it, it would affect you if you actually plug them in. I mean, because it's infinity, you'd have to keep going and going and going and going and going, but you would still end up with the same answer. Because like if it's I, think about what's happening, right? If I take the 1 and plug it in here, I get 0. 1/3 to the 0 is 1, and that's 6. That would be my first term, right? If it starts at 0, this becomes I plug 0 in, it's still 1/3 to the 0, which is 1 times 6. So your A sub 1 is still 6.
So
it's just a format.
So it doesn't change how we...
No.
Because it doesn't affect the A1 and R.
Correct. It will be either 1 and I minus 1, or it will be 0 and I, and you do them the exact same way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, yeah.
So for number 5, it has to be between 0 and 1, right?
The absolute value of it has to be between 0 and 1. So it can be negative, but it has to be between 0 and 1.
All right.
Okay, so before I get to the homework questions, because if you don't have homework questions, you can actually get started on the quiz review. I just want to go over your topics. So this is obviously something that if you haven't built a reference sheet, this is what I would recommend to go on your reference sheet. In 8.1, there's not really any formula. So in 8.1, it was like general series and sequences, okay? These are the ones that when you're doing summation, you have to plug the numbers in starting at the bottom number and up to the top number and then add them together. You can't use a formula for those kind of summation. So the questions you'll see from 8.1 are either find the certain amount of terms in the series, and you're literally just plugging it in, or find a specific term in the sequence, and you're just plugging that one in, or the sum. That's what would happen in like 8.1. (8.2) was when arithmetic series was talked about, and these are ones where you add the same number each time, or subtract if it was negative. And that number is D, the common difference. So when we're finding the nth term and it's arithmetic, it's A sub n equals A sub 1 plus D times n minus 1. So you'll most likely get a question that'll either say, find the series or find the terms in the series, then figure out your D, then find the equation. Or it will say, here's the information, find the equation, and then find a specific term. And then if it's arithmetic, you can use the partial sum formula, which is n over 2 times first plus last. And remember, if n is 1, so if it's 1 on the bottom, then the number on the top is the n. If it's anything else, then you want to do top minus bottom plus 1. And then geometric is when you are multiplying by the same number, which is now R each time. And that's called your common ratio.
The second one says add and subtract same.
Add and subtract same number each time, and then equals D. D is the what we call that, whatever it is you're adding and subtracting. And then the nth term of the geometric is A sub n equals A sub 1 times R to the n minus 1, and that n minus 1 is only on the R. And then you could get the sum of a finite, which is the ones we just did in the warm-up. A1 times 1 minus R to the n over 1 minus R. And sum of the infinite, A1 over 1 minus R, but that can only be done if the absolute value of R is I wrote greater than, and that's wrong. It's less than or equal to 1. So it has to be a fraction. It can be positive or negative. It has to be a fraction less than 1. So not improper, but a fraction less than 1.
That's subtraction, top minus bottom.
Top minus bottom plus 1. Yeah, that's how you figure out the number of terms. Okay, and then again, reminder for function calculators only, no scientific. If you don't have one, you can use the lockdown one. It will be the basic one, not the scientific one. So like the issue that we had with like the scientific notation won't happen because it will be the basic one. I think Miss Meadows has a class set for you guys, so I think I asked her to check today. She's gonna check, and then I'll have like a handheld for function like this for each of you. Okay. If she, for some reason, does not, then we can just use the lockdown one. If you have a floor function at home and you want to use it, that's fine. You will show it to me at the beginning of class. So when you're practicing, if you don't have a floor function, my advice is to use the iPhone one turned vertically, again, so like up like this, because that's the same kind of keys that you would have on your quiz. I would say you could survive without it. You don't really need it, but things like 2 to the 7th, you don't want to have to do. All right, so this was 6 from homework. It said consider the following: A1 equals 12, R equals 3 halves, and you want to find the 8th term. And it said find the indicated term using a table feature, which is fine to learn how to do that, but you won't have your calculator for that part of your, you won't have it at all for the quiz to do that. And if I do split your test, you wouldn't have it, so just keep that in mind. What you want to know how to do it algebraically, which is basically how we've been doing it. So I'm going to figure out that my AN is A1, which is 12, times R, which is 3 halves, to the n minus 1. And then I want to find the 8th term. So 12, 3 halves, 8 minus 1, which becomes 12, 3 halves, to the 7th. And then 3 to the 7th is 2,187, and 2 to the 7th is 128. And then I can simplify the 12 and the 128. So 128. They're both ways away 4. This is 32, and this is 3. And then 3 times 2,187 is 6,561 over 32. So that would be your exact answer. That would be what goes here on the table. When you look at it, it's rounded. So the table feature actually rounds it. That's why it would be 205. Like this is 6,561 divided by 32 is 205.03. But I want you to keep it exact. So your answer would be that 6561 slash 32 if you're writing it in on Canvas. Obviously, if you're here in person, you can just leave it like that on your paper. Yeah.
Could you write the formula without the numbers next to it, please?
The AN formula?
Yeah.
Yeah, AN equals A1 times R to the n minus 1.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and then you guys also asked for 8, right? Yeah, okay, so 8, also the same thing. So this says find the sum, use the graphing utility to verify your result. So this is a geometric, and it's finite, which means I can do A1 times 1 minus R to the n over 1 minus R. So A1 is not, there's no number being raised to a power this time, which really means there's a 1 there. So this would be 1 times 1 minus R is negative 2. To the n, the bottom's 1, so the n is 7, over 1 minus R, which is negative 2. So the trickiest part about this one was that there was no visible A1. A1 is whatever's not being raised to the power, which would be on the front of that -2. There's no number there this time, which means there's a 1. So then I'd get -2 to the 7th. So I'd get 1 minus -128 over 1 plus 2. So I'd get 1 plus 120, 1 plus 128, which is 129 over 3, and that's 43. So I'm assuming it was the same thing for psi. Is that, wait, was that you? No. Yeah, both psi and Amanda. That it was the A1 being 1 that threw you?
No, I got that from mine.
Oh. So do you remember what numbers you had? Did you have this one?
I had all the same numbers except the one above the E thing is a 5.
5. Okay, so it would have been 1 minus -2 to the 5th over 1 minus -2. -2 to the 5th is the -32. And then 1 plus 2, so this becomes plus, and that becomes 33 over 3, which should have been 11.
I missed the negative sign.
Yeah, it's always the negatives. Okay, then number 13, well, this is 10, this is Maria's. Use summation notation to write the sum. So, she probably just worked it all the way out. So remember, when it's summation notation, you're just looking for the notation there. So the A1 is 7. The AN is 896, and then you had to figure out how many terms there are, and the R is 2. You had to figure out how many terms there are by doing 896 equals 7 times 2 to the n minus 1, which is almost the exact same thing we did yesterday in the notes. 896 divided by 7, 128. This is the same one. And then this is 2 to the 7th. And then 7 equals n minus 1, and n equals 8. So you just had to set, she just had to set up the summation. Yeah.
For number 8, I just did it over again, but I got the same answer that I put.
So you had different numbers?
Yeah.
What were your numbers?
I just had -3 instead of -2.
But the n was still 7?
Yes.
Okay, so A1 is still 1, R is -3, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so 1 times 1 minus -3 to the 7th over 1 minus -3. -3 to the 7th. Oh, I don't need the one on the front. 1 minus a -2187 over 1. This becomes plus 3. This is plus 2188 over 4. 2188 divided by 4 is 547.
Yeah, that's what I put.
And it marked it wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, let me look at yours. Okay, this is 13, so it says determine whether the sequence associated with the series is arithmetic or geometric. So the question is, are you adding or subtracting the same thing each time, or are you multiplying? So each time we're actually subtracting 5, which means this would be arithmetic. My common difference is -5. Then you want to find the sum of the first 15 terms. So because it's arithmetic, we use the partial sum, which is n over 2 times first plus last. So we know the n, there's 15 terms. We know the first, it's 27, but we don't know the last yet. So because it's the 15th term, I can find it using a sub n. So a sub n would be a1 plus d times n minus 1 if it's arithmetic. So an would be 27 plus d, which is actually a -5, n minus 1, or a sub n equals 27 minus 5 times n minus 1. Now I can go a step further. If I was answering this as what is the equation, then I would keep working. So this would be 32 minus 5n. But this case is not asking you for that. It's just asking you for the last. So you could plug the 15 into here or what we just got. So 32 minus 5 times 15 would be 32 minus 75. Which is negative 43. So that's the last one. So then I would do that 43 plus negative 43 plus 27, and I'd get 15 over 2, and that would be negative 16. And then 2 goes in there 8 times, so it would be 15 times 8, and it's negative, so it would be negative 120.